Hello and welcome everyone, I'm Joe, and as you can tell from the title, I'm going to be doing a review of Alphacore Issue 1, and I gotta say from the start, this is a lot better than the other Rippaverse stories so far. And the thing about those stories is that it has to do with July being fairly new to writing. He's not used to it. Chuck Dixon, on the other hand, is very much accustomed to it because, well, he's been doing this for long enough. And I'm actually going to have to admit, I kind of like this issue. I'm not the biggest superhero fan. I'm not terribly fond of science fiction at all. I'm a bit of a hater of the genre. I just don't see the point of it. And well, at least at this point, I don't see the point of it. And nobody seems to be able to write as well as older science fiction writers could. But the thing about this story is that, warning, there will be spoilers. It starts with the lead, Brian, I think it is, being on the prowl to help the police. They don't appreciate it because they're basically Marvel cops and don't really like help, I guess. As they're led by, I don't know, Black J. Jonah Jameson, who doesn't like Brian. Valdez, the light whip lady, ends up taking issue with Brian helping as well because this isn't their job. And Brian gets a scolding from the chief of police, or at least someone higher ranking than him. And the guy chews him out for no reason. And, of course, Brian in one ear, out the other, because he doesn't care for the view that, well, if people are going to die, not my problem. He just wants to help everyone as much as he could. Although, I will acknowledge, I actually wish that the story had leaned a little more into the idealism of the character and showed it a bit more, because the trouble is that he's, I think, supposed to be a bit like Superman, but if that's the case, I want to see more of him, except he's basically Texan Superman. And there's something you could do there with him being much more married to Texas, in a way, the Lone Star State. Make him a full-on Texas stereotype. And by that I mean all the positive stuff, like the cowboy, the rib-loving, Lone Star State, kind of stereotype that people associate with Texas. That said, the bomber whom he stopped goes to prison for a time, and of course a lawyer arrives, a lawyer who's a big critic of Brian. And the trouble is that the villains, who are a pair of business moguls, are not impressed with the bomber guy failing to blow up a bank, because the hope was that it would blow it up and cover some of the male villains', well, proclivities in crime. So what ends up happening is that his girlfriend, I believe, or wife, ends up trying to arrange things in a certain way. The trouble is that, well, I'm just trying to summarize this because I don't have much time. She arranges, once things start to go south, for the box that belongs to her husband or boyfriend or whatever in the bank to be exchanged with evidence that leads to the lawyer, I believe, and then has him done away with. And the trouble is, Alphacore then follows this evidence up to the muscle, and to cover their tracks, they decide to go full-on terrorist and crash the helicarrier. Because Alphacore has now a helicarrier. And, of course, Valdez's partner in crime, Wilkins, for the attempted arrest, who was her partner in crime, sorry, I'm slipping on my words. Her partner in crime for the arrest of Galvin, an electricity guy, who's able to slightly manipulate metal objects, I believe, is able to stop the helicarrier, but he dies in the effort of doing so. And he gets a state funeral, with, of course, the Lone Star flag drooped over the coffin, not the American flag, which was a little detail that I noticed. I don't know if this is how it's done in Texas. Somebody let me know in the comment section. I'd be very curious to find out. And because I'm French Canadian, and to me, there's a lot about Texas that's just a curiosity, and I don't know much about the Lone Star State, other than the stereotype, and that I generally like it. Anyways, the villains try to escape in a private jet, and the private jet is wrecked, and, of course, the heroes walk away, having accomplished nothing in regards to stopping them for very long, as the couple are just going to take out another jet to jet around. As they're like Bill Gates, they have like probably 20 or 30 of them. And that said, this story is a lot more simple and less convoluted than the Isom stories, which are a mess, to be quite honest, quite blunt. The story here is well structured, I will admit. There's very little to complain about. The art in the first few pages is a little weird, but it's not as bad as others I've seen recently. Oh my gosh, I've seen so much bad comic book art of late. And yes, I'm referring to that Andrew Tate issue that I saw someone's video review of, and the art was so bad. I could draw better than that. And here, the art is generally pretty good. The coloring is good. The characterization is good, but I kind of wanted more screen time with the heroes. The problem I have is that there's more panel time given to the villains. And I understand you have to establish the villains, but the trouble is none of the villains are particularly iconic. And the trouble with a lack of iconic villains is that, the villains should not be the main characters. The heroes are the main characters. And the heroes are fighting and struggling for screen time here. So that is a complaint I do have. But let's be honest, it could be that Dixon is planning to lead into a much, much deeper second issue where we'll get to see more of the heroes and see a more iconic villain of sorts. To be honest, I'd kind of like to see something like a superpowered version of Bane. I don't know. As that's what Chuck Dixon's also famous for inventing, because at least I believe so. And Bane is such a great villain. He's arguably one of Batman's best. Just after the likes of Ra's al Ghul, Two-Face, and Holiday Killer, which, honestly, Long Halloween, seriously, if you've not read it, read it. It's great. Anyways, this story, if I had to give it a rating from 0 to 4, 0 is beyond the pall, 4 is perfect. So just for context, let's say everything that's coming out of Marvel and DC right now is 0. I've not read any of it, but I know it's 0. 4 would be something akin to any issue of Vagabondo. That is to say, the manga, or I should say the graphic novel series of Musashi. Or even the Conan the Cimmerian 2003 Dark Horse comic book run. Now, here, I'm actually going to say this is probably a 2.1. This is really good, and it is above average. But as I said, I'm not really into superhero stuff. And yes, I realize the irony that I'm not really into sci-fi, and I have a spare sci-fi channel just for fun. I realize the irony there. But I actually think this is a vast improvement over the last few issues, and that this issue, quite honestly, could turn things around. I don't know. And yeah, if Chuck Dixon ever ends up watching this, kudos to you. And I'm a big fan. And this is actually a vast improvement. I only hope we get to see also a Chuck Dixon follow-up comic book story or graphic novel story to something like Hour of the Dragon. That would be really cool. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out my book, Victor Tempestson. It's a fantasy horror novel, or novella I should say, only about 70 pages, available now on Kindle. Do check it out, and don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button, and have a great day.